It is Super Tuesday, but people in Arizona may not be going to the polls today, but there's certainly some big news in terms of the politics in Arizona. I want to put up this tweet right now. Kirsten Sinema posting this on social media, saying she will not run for re-election. She'll leave that at the end of the term. And of course, this has had implications, very big ones, around the state of Arizona and as the potential majority in the Senate as well. The Democrats, she's now an independent, but certainly a lot in terms of that. We want to bring in now Samara Klar, a professor at the University of Arizona, to discuss this further. Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. First, just maybe what's the initial reaction when we see this news that Sinema is not running for re-election?
Well, I think Ruben Gallego and Kari Lake must be pretty relieved to finally have some clarity in terms of how they can operate their campaigns. The campaigns here in Arizona have been on a bit of a hold while we all wait to figure out who the candidates will actually be. So as far as Arizonans should be concerned, I think the campaign for Senate starts today. Now we know Gallego and Lake will be able to run somewhat traditional campaigns without worrying about competing against a third party in the middle.
Yeah, that was a very good point. The campaigns really do start today. In terms of those two other candidates, of course, Sinema was an independent, slid over from the Democratic side to the independent side. In terms of maybe who this opens the door for more, is it Ruben Gallego or is it Kari Lake? Who has more of an opening now?
Well, I think that's something all three candidates, including Sinema, have been trying to figure out. Who exactly was her voter base? Who was she supposed to be taking voters from? We know that her approval rating was very low among Democrats. In fact, it was a bit higher among Republicans than it was among Democrats. Republicans, though, seemed somewhat uneasy about voting for Sinema over a Republican candidate, although, on the other hand, Kari Lake just recently lost a somewhat winnable election in Arizona, so she seems to have her own struggles with Republican voters. It's been really confusing for, I think, the voters and the candidates to figure out who Sinema's voters were. And that means, we're not sure what this means in terms of who the first supporters are gonna vote for now, because we don't know who her supporters were in the first place.
Yeah, that is a very good point. And of course, I mentioned the fact that she did move from Democrat to independent. Do you think that was a factor there, potentially not really finding a home in a political party, and that kind of maybe homelessness amongst the politics kind of maybe did her in the end?
Well, I think moving over to become an independent was more a sign of probably the inevitable decline of her career in the Senate. Her approval rating had fallen so low among Democrats. She was so unpopular here in her home state among those who had voted her that I think becoming an independent was a bit of a Hail Mary move on her part, hoping that potentially she could drum up more support from independents. Arizona has over a third of registered voters who identify as independents. But as an independent, she did not seem to gain that increase in support that she was looking for. And I think she was looking at the same polling numbers we all were, which showed a very, very unlikely path to victory.
That is so very true as well. And of course, Sinema, when she did earn that Senate seat, it was the first Democratic in quite some time, in a generation, to kind of go back to the Democratic side. Maybe does that give the Republicans opening? Maybe what are Republicans in Arizona thinking that maybe they can take this seat back to where they think it belongs?
Well, Republicans are coming off of a pretty tough streak here in Arizona. Arizona currently has a Democratic governor, a Democratic senator, and a Democratic-turned independent senator in Kirsten Sinema. It has been, I believe, over 60 years since Arizona's had those three positions of power all occupied by Democratic candidates. Republican candidates have not done well in Arizona recently at the federal level. Now, much of that could be attributed to potentially a lack of popularity by Donald Trump. Donald Trump lost Arizona in 2020. He won by a very small margin in 2016. And Donald Trump's endorsed candidates in 2022, including Kari Lake, didn't do so well. So Republicans are going to have to figure out here in Arizona whether they want to shift their narrative a little bit and potentially move away from Donald Trump, or whether they think that this is still the best path going forward.
That is a very good point. Of course, one of the big candidates there, Kari Lake, we talked about her as well. And I do want to put up the statement here from her on social media talking about this announcement by Sinema. I'm going to read it in full here. As a journalist, I covered Kirsten Sinema for many years. We may not agree on everything, but I know she shares my love for Arizona. Senator Sinema had the courage to stand tall against the far left in defense of the filibuster, despite the overwhelming pressure from the radicals in her party, like Ruben Gallego, who called on her to burn it all down. Ruben Gallego would be a radical departure from the representation we had in Arizona. He votes with Biden 100% of the time, supported the Iran deal, sanctuary cities, defunding the police, voting rights for everyone pouring across the border. He even called the border wall, quote, stupid. Arizonans will not be fooled by Gallego. I will be a voice for all Arizonans. I wish Senator Sinema the best on her next chapter. And of course, we've heard a lot from Kari Lake, and that statement sounded a little bit gracious. What did we make of that statement from Kari Lake? And maybe is that a tone shift at all from her?
Well, I think she's trying to do two things. First of all, she wants to welcome any Sinema supporters over to her side. She's saying, hey, I respect Sinema. If you respect Sinema, so do I. Come on over and you can vote for me. And she's beginning her attacks on Gallego. The campaign is starting today. Gallego and Lake both have had to figure out whether they need to spend any of their resources on Sinema or whether they can just squarely take aim at one another. And I think sort of first shots fired. It's ready to go now. Lake versus Gallego. They're going to try to woo anyone who may have been hoping to vote for Sinema and try to tear each other down.
Yeah, that is so very true. I want to talk about the issues a little bit because, of course, at the center of Sinema, she was talking about the border. And, of course, Kari Lake mentioned that in this discussion as well. In terms of the U.S.-Mexico border, because Arizona shares a border there with Mexico as well. And, of course, kind of down there is a main corridor for a lot of migrants as well. Did that deter her a little bit when both sides were going back and forth and some of her negotiations didn't come through? Maybe was that a little bit of a defeating nature for her to see not a lot of movement in terms of what's going on at the border?
Yeah, I don't think Kyrsten Sinema really made the impact that she was potentially trying to make here in Arizona. I think she had a few issues where she was hoping to make some major headway and get some glory, and the border was certainly one of them. The issue with the border has been such a complicated political nightmare throughout the entire year. I think a lot of voters don't even know who to blame anymore. They just know that nobody really deserves any credit. It's been a losing issue for both parties. So, the border certainly didn't help her. There was a lot of issues where she was seen as a deterrent to Biden's agenda. There was issues where she was seen as potentially not representing her constituents' views. So she had, she saw a lot of obstacles over her one term in the Senate. Yeah. And I think people were somewhat expecting that this would be the outcome. She would not run for re-election, but she definitely kept everyone waiting. And I don't make any political predictions, that's for sure. So I didn't have my money on anything.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, it might overshadow Super Tuesday or kind of hide under Super Tuesday. Kind of just depends on the way you look at it. Samara Klar, any parting words? Anything you else want to leave with our audience before I let you go?
No, I think we covered it. It was great chatting with you.
All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. And of course, next week, primaries in Arizona. So thanks again for joining us.
Talk to you again.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to continue on here on Live Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack. Thank you so much for joining us. I do want to put up more just images there of Kyrsten Sinema as well. Of course, we're following this here on Live Now from Fox. We're hearing different statements as well about this decision not to run for re-election. Of course, Senator Chuck Schumer saying Senator Sinema has blazed a trail of accomplishment in the Senate. Her work on legislations like the Inflation Reduction Act, Respect for Marriage Act, and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act improved the lives of Arizonans and all Americans. I look forward to continuing our work together during this time, and I'm sure she will continue to bring her tenacity and energy to her work in the Senate on behalf of the people of her state. So that's just another statement as we're continuing to follow it here on Live Now from Fox. On Super Tuesday, of course, Arizona not amongst the states that will cast their ballot today. That will come in a week's time.